Hey guys, Jacqueline here, and welcome to part 12 of how to make a 2D RPG in Unity. In this video, we'll be refactoring our items to get it ready to expand so that we can create more items such as a hoe, watering can, axe, and more. First, we'll be creating a scriptable object to hold all of the item data for each item, and then each item will have a reference to its item data. The item data is essentially what makes the item the type of item it is. It's going to hold the name, icon, item stats, and more. This will come in handy as we expand the number and type of items that we want to have in the future. Then we'll be splitting our collectible script into two parts. The first part will remain the collectible script and handle getting picked up by the player. The second will be the item itself. We're going to create an item script that will keep track of all of the item data. Right now, there isn't a lot of data, but we'll be expanding it in the future. Once we've made these changes, we're going to have a lot of errors to fix, so we'll have to go through each script and make sure that we fix all of them. Let's jump right into the refactoring. Navigate to your scripts folder and create a new folder called Scriptable Objects. Then in the Scriptable Objects folder, create a new C# script called Item Data and open it. Once the script is open, let's stop inheriting from monobehavior and start inheriting from Scriptable Object. Now that this is a Scriptable Object, we'll have no use for the start and update function as they only work on scripts that inherit from monobehavior. So we'll delete them. Then, above the class definition, let's create a new tag called Create Asset Menu. This is going to let us right-click and create an item data file in our assets folder. In parentheses, we can define the file name, the menu name, and the order that it appears in the Create Asset menu. First, let's name the file item data, and then we'll name the menu item data as well, and let's set the order to 50. With that done, we can add some item data fields to the script. First, let's give the item a name. Create a new public string variable called item name and set the default to item name. We'll be using the item name to replace the collectible type that we currently have on the collectible. Instead of checking its type when we add our items to our inventory, we're going to check its name. This makes creating items a lot easier on us because we won't have to add an entry to the collectible type enum every time we make a new item. Instead, we can simply add a new item data and give it a name. Then, after the name, let's create an entry for the item icon. We need this to set the icon in the UI. With that added, save the script and head back to Unity. In Unity, navigate to your scripts folder and create a new C# script called item. This is the first step in splitting up the collectible. The item script's going to handle everything item specific. Let's open up the script and delete the start and update functions. First, the item's going to need to know what type of item it is, so we need to add a reference to our item data. Create a new public item data variable called data. Since the item script is going to handle everything specific to the item, and the collectible script is going to handle everything specific to being collected, we should transfer all of the code setting up the rigid body from the collectible script to the item script. Open up the collectible script and cut and paste the RB2D variable and the awake function into the item script just under the item data variable. Since the rigid body is getting set up in the awake function, we don't really need to see it in the inspector in Unity. So let's hide the variable by adding a tag to the line. We're going to add the hide in inspector tag just before our variable. Since we're setting up our rigid body here, we should also require the class to have the rigid body component. Above our class definition, let's add the tag require component and set the type of to rigid body 2D. Save the item script and head back to the collectible script. Then let's delete the collectible type and the sprite icon since we no longer need them. Then let's also delete the collectible type enum at the bottom of the file since we will no longer be using it. The only thing that should be left in the collectible script is the onTriggerEnter2D function that tells the player to pick the item up and add it to its inventory. Since only items will be collectible, let's require the game object to have the items component on it. Let's add the require component tag above the class definition and set the type of to be item. Now we can save the script and head back to Unity. You'll now notice that we have a bunch of errors in our console. We'll have to fix all of them for the game to work properly, so let's jump right in. First, we'll fix the errors on the item manager. Open up the script and take a minute to look through it. All of the errors have red squiggles under the parts that are now incorrect with the changes that we've made. We're just going to make our way down the script starting at the very top. The first thing that we have to do is change the collectible item array from type collectible to item. Then we can rename the array from collectible items to just items. The next thing we'll change is the dictionary. Let's change the key type from collectible type to string. We'll now be using the item name to find the item since it's less fragile and will be a lot less work for us in the future. Then, let's change the value type from collectible to item. Let's also give our dictionary a better name since it no longer holds collectible items. I'm going to name it Name to Item Dict. With that done, let's fix our for each loop in the awake function. Now you'll find a squiggle under your for each loop in your awake function. This is because we no longer are looping through a collectibles list. Instead, we're looping through items, but the type that we defined in our for each loop is collectible. Let's go ahead and change this now. Next, we'll have to change the add item parameter from collectible to item since our dictionary no longer holds collectibles and instead just holds items. Then inside the add item function, we need to change all of the parts that are read too. So let's change the if statement, checking if it contains the key, to item.data.itemName instead. Then we'll also do the same thing when we add it to the dictionary. We'll say item.data.itemName. Finally, we'll fix the errors in the getItemByType function. Let's change the return type of the function to item. Then we'll need to change the parameter type from collectible type to string. We'll also need to rename the parameter from type to key since it's more suitable. Finally, let's give the function a better name since it isn't getting item by type anymore. I'm going to use Command RR to change the name of the function to getItemByName. Let's save the script and then open our inventory script. In the inventory script, we'll fix all of the errors in the slot class first. Since we're no longer using the collectible type, we will need to update the type variable. Change the type to string and rename it to item name. Then in the constructor, when we created a slot, we had set the collectible type to none. So let's go ahead and change that now to be an empty string. Next, let's change the parameter for the add item function. We should change collectible to item. Then inside of our add function, let's fix it where it's trying to set the item name to item.type. Instead, let's set the item name to item.data.itemName. Then on the next line, we're trying to set our icon, but item.icon is no longer valid. We should say item.data.icon. In the remove item function, we need to set the item name to be an empty string instead of a collectible type.none. With that, the slot class has been updated and we can now update the inventory class. In the add function, change the parameter type from collectible to item. Then in our first for loop, we need to fix the if statement. Instead of saying if slot.itemName equals item.type, we should say if slot.itemName equals item.data.itemName. Then in the second for loop, we will need to fix the if statement here as well. Instead of saying slot.itemName equals collectible type.none, we should say if slot.itemName equals an empty string. Let's save the script and open the inventory UI script. With the inventory UI script open, let's head down to the refresh function to fix our errors. In the refresh function, we should change where we are checking if player.inventory.slots at index i.itemName is equal to collectible type.none. Instead, we should be checking if it's an empty string. Then we'll need to scroll down to the remove function and fix our errors there. Let's change the type of item to drop from collectible to item, since our getItemByName function now returns an item and not a collectible. Then we'll need to fix the name of the function that we're calling in order to get the item. So let's change it to say GameManager.instance.itemManager.getItemByName. You'll notice that there's still one error in the drop item function call in the if statement body that checks if the item is not null. The error is caused by the drop item function having a parameter of type collectible, but now we're trying to pass an item to it. Let's save the script and open up the player script to fix it. In the player script, head to the drop item function. Let's change the parameter type from collectible to item since our collectible no longer handles anything to do with the item. It only handles picking up the item now. Changing the parameter type from collectible to item will now cause an error on our dropped item variable. So we'll need to change the dropped item variable to be type item instead of collectible. This will fix our error. Now let's head back to Unity to make sure that there are no more errors in our console. Back in Unity, you'll see that we are left with only one error in our console. The error is in the collectible script, so let's open it up and fix it. The error is coming from the player.inventory.add function call. The collectible is attempting to pass itself to the function, but the add function no longer accepts collectibles. Instead, it requires an item component. So instead of passing this, we'll need to pass in the item to it. We can do this by getting the item from the game object. Above the player.inventory.add function call, let's create a local variable of type item and call it item. Then let's set the item equal to getComponentItem. Before we do anything else, we should check to see if we successfully got the item from the game object. Because we required the item at the top of the class, we should always get it from the item, but to be safe, let's check to see if the item is not null. If the item is not null, then we can add it to the inventory. Copy and paste the player.inventory.add function call and the destroy function call into the if statement body. We should put the destroy call into the if statement body as well, because if we don't, it'll remove the collectible from the scene even if it doesn't get added to the inventory. And that could be confusing for players when they think that they picked up the item, but it's not in the inventory. We should also put the destroy call after we add the item to the inventory, because if we destroy the item first, we will be unable to pass the item into the inventory. What will get passed is a null reference, and you'll end up with a null reference error in Unity in your inventory script. If this happens, make sure that you put the destroy function call after you add the item to the inventory. Save the collectible script and head back to Unity so that we can make sure that everything looks like it's working the same as it did before we refactored. First, let's check the console for any more errors. If you still have errors, you can double-click them and Unity will open the script to the line that's causing the error. If there are no more errors, then we can make sure that everything in the inspector is set properly on all of our components. First, let's check the prefab of our carrot seeds. Head to the prefabs folder and click on the carrot seeds prefab. You'll notice that the item script was automatically added to the carrot seeds prefab. This is because we required that the collectible have an item script on it. But the item script isn't set up. We need to populate the item data field with an item data. So let's create one now. Navigate to your assets folder and create a new folder called items. Then inside the folder, let's right click and create a new item data. You'll see the item data menu item at the top just below the folder menu item. We should now have a new item data scriptable object in our items folder. Let's name the object carrot_seeds. Then let's set up the object. Change the item name in the inspector to carrot_seeds. Then let's drag the icon into the icon field. Lock the inspector and navigate to the sprites folder. Then expand the crop sprite sheet. Then let's drag the icon sprite into the icon field. Once you're done, don't forget to unlock the inspector. Head back to the prefabs folder and once again open your collectible prefab. Then in the inspector, we can set the carrot seeds item data. Click on the small dot in the right of the field. This will bring up a menu with all of the eligible items to get stored here. There should only be one right now, so let's select the carrot seeds item data and close the dialog box. Now we'll need to select the game manager in the hierarchy and check the item manager script. Because we changed the collectible array to an item array, we'll have to add the item back to the item array. Drag the carrot seeds prefab from the folder onto the item array. This will add one element to the array, and the carrot seeds will be populated within that element. Save the scene and hit play to verify that everything works the same as it did before. You should be able to walk around the scene, and the camera should follow you around as you do. When the character walks into a carrot seed pack, it should disappear, and when you open your inventory, it should be updated with the correct icon and the correct number of carrot seeds. Pressing the remove button should still drop the item back into the world the same way as it did before. You should also be able to walk into an interactable area and interact with the ground. If all of this is working, then we've successfully refactored the way our items work. And we can now easily add more items with very little work on our part. Great work, guys! In the next video, we're going to be adding a hoe item that we'll use to plow the ground tiles. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and if you love this series, please consider supporting me on Patreon. You can find the link in the description below. Thanks! I'll see you next time.